everybody, welcome back to Great Northwest Weaponry. This is Thomas, and today we are taking a look at the almighty Luger P08, also known as Pistole Parabellum 1908. This is a gun that I've been really excited to do a demo of for a while. We actually featured it in our Wehrmacht sidearms Day at the Range video. One of the most sought after guns, period. I mean, people will just about sell their grandmother's kidney to get their hands on a Luger. It's a really cool piece, really interesting design, really historic. And with that, let's go talk about the history in the gun room.
What can I say about the Luger P08 that you haven't probably already heard 100 times? There is an enormous amount of resources available on the Pistole Parabellum 1908. A ton of ink has been spilled and a lot of words said. So when I actually spent quite a lot of time researching for this video because I wasn't sure how I wanted to tackle this, and the historical use of the gun, especially in the Second World War, but in the First World War as well, is pretty well known and just open knowledge. So I've decided that I'm going to mostly actually focus on the origin of the gun and how it came into being, because I could easily turn this into a 30-minute demo of this thing without even really trying very hard. As such, this will probably be one of the longer pistol demos that we've done. So the origins of this thing. First off, the name Luger is a little misleading. The true origin point for Georg Luger's Pistole Parabellum 1908 is actually the pistols of Hugo Borchardt, a German inventor from the mid to late 1800s, who designed many guns for DWM, the company that originally manufactured the Luger, in fact, including, notably, the Model 1893 automatic pistol. Often is called a Borchardt automatic pistol or a Borchardt 1893. I think I'm saying the name Borchardt correctly, but it's kind of a tough one. Look at how it's spelt, and yeah, it's strange. But the gun wouldn't actually reach a design really recognizable as the Luger until 1908, and it was Georg Luger who was responsible for getting it to that point. Interestingly enough, this actually was because he was demoing Borchardt's pistol to the United States military to see if they wanted to contract DWM to make them Borchardt automatics. Of which, again, this is an interesting story to me because at this time, Georg Luger was working for the Berlin firm Ludwig Loh and C, I believe is how it's said. It's CIE. That looks like C or key, maybe. It's a German pronunciation, and you don't really see C at the beginning of words in German followed by IE very often, so that's my best guess. Ludwig Loh and C. He eventually became a consulting engineer and was sent to the US to demo the Borchardt, presumably the Model 1893 automatic, and the gun was very heavily criticized, and Luger took all of this criticisms and decided to try and improve the gun based on what feedback he'd been given. And that is the origin point for the Luger as we know it today. It is Luger himself that did eventually design what became the Model 1908. There are at least 10 different variants of the Luger, probably a lot more than that, honestly, that I've probably like sub-variations of those variations. In fact, the first military to adopt the Luger was well before the P08 was even a thing. It was the Swiss in 1900, or I've also seen sources that say 1901. This would have been probably chambered in 7.65, I believe, was the original caliber that the Luger pistol design was chambered for. In 1908, it would be beefed up to the 9mm, and that's why you're going to see on pretty much any box of 9mm ammunition that you see. 9mm Luger. At the time, I believe it was called 9mm Parabellum. Again, the technical name for this is Parabellum Pistole 1908. And again, there's a lot of different variants of it. Going back to the deal with Switzerland actually being the first to adopt the Luger, that goes off and leads to a whole chain of different Luger models. The model 1906, the 1906-29. I would love to get a Swiss Luger someday and dive into that a little more, especially in 06-29. They're very interesting, got a grip safety, and they're just very strange. There was Lugers designed with the intention of targeting the American audience, 45 ACP Luger American Eagle, and the gun, once it was adopted officially by the German army in 1908, that design remained pretty much unchanged until 1942. Even the Walther P08 was the Luger killer, and it was intended to replace the Luger, and it eventually did, but because of wartime needs, the Luger just kept on being made, mostly by Mauser in the Second World War. Another thing I would love to have is a World War II Mauser Black Widow Luger. And this is actually a 1915 dated example, and all signs point to the fact that it probably stayed in German military use through the Second World War. If you saw the video that I did on Wehrmacht sidearms here not too long ago, I briefly mentioned that this gun supposedly came from a World War II veteran's footlocker. His family, after he passed, was going through stuff, found the footlocker, and inside was this, a 1911 and a Car 98, as well as some other paraphernalia that he'd brought back from Germany, supposedly. Again, this is what the guy behind the counter at the pawn shop told me. I like to think it's true. It's a cool story, and that would mean that this gun is a genuine World War II bringback if it is true. So I find that quite fascinating. And it also seems maybe somewhat likely because aside from like one small piece, we'll find that when we're at the tabletop view and the magazine, this is all matched aside from this one piece, and then this is a World War II magazine and a World War I gun. So it probably was re-arsenaled at some point. As I said, the German army had actually adopted the Luger. This was the official pistol of the German army through World War I, and right up until the start of World War II. And again, they didn't stop making them until 1941. Some 2 to 3 million were made, and it's just, they're so iconic. You're not going to see a movie involving World War II Germany that doesn't feature a Luger in it somewhere. They're all over the place. One of the most sought-after handguns of all time. And a really, really fun piece to shoot. The action is just so strange and like borderline alien by comparison to anything else you've probably ever shot. And to this day, every now and then a company will come up with some weird one-off design that is Luger-inspired. You'll see 22 sports pistols pop up every now and then that are a 22 Luger. They're just... You'll never find anything else quite like a Luger, I guess, is where I'm going with this. One thing that I neglected to mention, the German Navy actually did adopt the Luger in 1906 prior to the existence of the P08. Again, P08 is just kind of a shorthand name for the gun, and the name Luger is a colloquialism. It was not officially called that. It was a Pistol Parabellum 1908, and then there were the various other models of Pistol Parabellum or Parabellum pistols. Sometimes you see it both ways. Very storied handgun, and again, the whole history of this thing is so tied up in World War II that it's just very interesting. For one thing, GIs very specifically would often be looking for a Luger to bring home. You'll see that present in a lot of movies and TV shows as well, such as in Band of Brothers. There was at least 2 characters throughout that show that are obsessed with finding a Luger for one reason or another. One actually even accidentally kills himself with one by an accidental discharge. And by my understanding, that's something that actually happened, though accidentally discharging a Luger would probably have more to do with not knowing how the gun functioned than anything else. It's a complicated design, and again, it's nothing like anything that anybody else really was using, except for other countries that had used the Luger, like Switzerland, or Russia had a stockpile of them at one point. I think most of those were captures, and they never fielded them in any official capacity, by my understanding. But they did go all over the place, though. A lot of them were made for Finland, for instance. Actually, this loading tool and takedown tool that I've got here is a Finnish example that I got from my friends at the Warfront. So yeah, that's just another random little side story. And then you see Finland's own pistol that they developed later, the Lahti L35. I believe is how it's said, and the correct name for it. I could be mistaken. If I am, I'll post a correction. But just in appearance, it looks like a Luger, more or less. If you did not know exactly what one looked like and someone showed you it and went, this is a Luger, and you'd only seen glimpses of one, you would probably be convinced. That's another gun that, I would kill for an L35. Anyway, all that aside, this is probably the crown jewel of my pistol collection, especially for the semi-automatic pistols at this point. It's definitely up there. It's one that I've wanted forever, since before I was into guns. It's actually the gun that was the reason that I wanted to get into guns. I remember back to playing, I wanted to say Call of Duty, but it was actually before that. It was Medal of Honor, and watching like Indiana Jones see Luger pop up in both of those, and it just always was really fascinating to me. I just always wanted a Luger, and finally, in one of the crappiest years in recent memory, 2021, only maybe slightly better than 2020, finally got my hands on one. So anyway, let's go ahead and go to the tabletop and take a look at how to disassemble this thing and some of the markings. Disassembly of Lugers is a beast. Before we get into the beastly disassembly, a couple things to look at. For one, I'd mentioned that this is a Finnish marked takedown tool. In both World War I and World War II, these would have been issued with a takedown tool, but this one was apparently sent to Finland as seen by the SA stamp, which is not uncommon. A lot of this would have been made in Germany with a German-made Luger. Both would have been sent to Finland. Now, as far as markings, on your World War I and pre-World War I examples, you're going to have the same set of proof markings on the side here. There'll be 3 of them. Your 4th marking, if it is present, is going to be your military acceptance stamp, in this case, a Imperial German Eagle. Later examples, you'll see sometimes, first, date, stamped here, 1915. If you see a double-dated example, that means that it was reissued during the Weimar era, usually. And then your manufacturer is going to be back here on the toggle system, this one being a DWM, or Deutsche Waffen- und Munitionsfabriken. I will type that out, as it is a mouthful. Proof marks, again, just pretty much going to be the 3 that you see here, but there's going to be serial numbers on virtually everything. This one is matched almost across the board with the 41, except for this one piece right here is marked with a 26. And then, of course, the mismatched mag, of which in this case is a World War II mag. I'm fairly certain that this gun stuck around through World War II, so it's very likely that that marking being mismatched, that one piece being mismatched as far as the serial number, probably just had to be replaced. And then replacement mag, you can easily identify World War II mag, as it'll have a stick eagle usually, and a aluminum plate on the bottom instead of a wooden plate, as would be seen on a World War I example. Before we go any farther, I had forgotten to show this, so I'm cutting this bit in. You can actually use the takedown tool to help load the magazine. So as you see, the magazine has this little textured protrusion that you can use to pull down the spring. You can do it by hand, but that can wear your thumb pretty severely if the spring pressure is in good shape on your magazine. So you can take that hole on your takedown tool and put it over that protrusion and use the takedown tool for mechanical advantage on the spring of the magazine. Now, for takedown, you're going to need the magazine out of the gun. Don't want the gun to be unsafe. You want it to be on fire. You do want to check and make sure that it is empty because you're going to be sticking this against your hand here in a moment. So this is your takedown lever. This is a short recoil gun, so you want to push and then rotate that lever. I just push flatly with my hand, reach over with my thumb, and lower the takedown lever. Now, at this point, you can take the whole frame, and first you need to take off this side plate. It just pretty easily rotates up and out. So side plate off, and now the slide and toggle system can come off of the frame. That is all the more that we need the frame for at the moment, so I'm actually going to set that aside. After this, it gets a little more difficult. So to get the toggle system out, we need to punch out this pin. It can usually be done by hand. Just push on the right side of the gun until this is exposed a little bit, and then pull it out. If you can't quite get it, you can use your takedown tool to work under that lip a little bit, and then pull it free. Now your toggle system is free, and you can just pull it up and rotate it out of the gun. You'd be working with weird directional spring pressure because of this being the toggle action or Parabellum system. To get to the firing pin, you need to get in here. You're going to want to use your Luger tool. Really a flathead screwdriver would do it, but you're going to be pushing this in and rotating, I believe, counterclockwise. And if you're not careful, it can go flying because this is going to be your recoil spring. So push in, rotate, and there we go. Firing pin spring, firing pin. An interesting note, this is definitely a World War I firing pin, as it is not fluted. World War II firing pins would have little flutes, I believe 4 of them around the outside of it, but this is an original World War I firing pin. Now, got it all, this is as far as we're going to take it apart. We're not going to get into the trigger. Get all this back together. You want to make sure that that arm on the firing pin goes into this slot right here. Drop that in, get your spring, make sure it's seated in, and got a tab right here. You want to make sure that tab falls into line again with the slot on the side here. You're going to push in and rotate. There we go. It's a little bit difficult, but you want it to be the line vertical to the top of this. So that is done. Now, to get this back together is a bit strange, but it's easier than it looks actually. You're just, this has grooves that it fits into. Just get it lined up with the grooves and slide it in. Get the toggle rollers over the top and push it in. You want to have this flush to do this part easily. You're going to drop your pin back in on the left side, and if this is flush, it should drop right in. There we go. Wasn't quite flush. If you have some trouble, you can push it in with the flat side of this. There we go. Slide is back together, or I guess the toggle system. It's not really a slide in the proper sense. Now getting this back on the frame is a little tricky. You're going to go on the slides there, and you want to make sure that that locking arm goes into right into here. This is where it's supposed to lock in. If it's not in there, your gun's not going to go together properly. So, got that together. Click. If you've got spring pressure here, you're good. So, at this point, what we're going to do, we're going to take the side plate. See that little extension there? It goes in on the right side, and then it should sit right in. Push pressure on and put your takedown lever back into place. Now, it should all be good. Nothing's going flying. All seems right with the world. We put our magazine back in. And there we go. That is how you disassemble a Luger. Let's go shoot it some more.
Loading the Luger is a piece of cake. Got an 8-round detachable box magazine, and it just goes in the bottom. Also pretty ahead of its time for European pistols anyway, is the button detach instead of the more typical European heel release. And that is where the simplicity of the Luger ends, because then you've got the loading system, the Parabellum system, which is pull back on those arms and then let it forward. Very much different from anything else. Just making sure that I had a round loaded. I didn't think I saw one pick up, but I was wrong. Safety is on the side of the gun here. This is in the fire position. And then safe. So put it back on fire. 8 rounds. Shooting this thing is so satisfying, and you can really tell when it locks open, if for no other reason than the fact that that is now in your way, but you can feel it rock back and stop when it locks open, and these should always lock open if all is right with the gun. You have to drop the magazine to drop the toggle system. It's a very weird and interesting piece. Again, one of the most iconic pistols used by really anybody in either World War. Again, any video or movie you see involving Germany in the Second World War is probably going to feature a Luger, and most videos involving the First World War will as well. This one, again, is a 1915 example with a World War II mag, of which we looked a little closer at just a few minutes ago. So, awesome piece. So glad to finally have one in my collection. This has kind of been one of my dream guns for a long time, and now I have one. And now we have demoed it, so you'll definitely be seeing this thing popping up again in the future. Meanwhile, hope you all enjoyed the video. It's been Thomas of Great Northwest Weaponry, and I'll see you next time.